What's up, YouTube? So today's video, I'm going to show you the Form B pre-trip inspection. We're going to start from the fuel area going back to the coupling system. Alright, so after you've checked your oil hub and you're going to continue to move on, we're going to start with the mirror bracket, making sure the mirror bracket is properly mounted secure, it's not broke, loose, or missing, all the hardware is present, it's not cracked or broken or damaged in any way, it's in good working condition. I'm going to go ahead and move to my door. I'm going to check my door to make sure it opens and closes freely. I'm going to make sure it is properly mounted secure, it's not broke, loose, or missing, all the hardware is present. I'm going to move in here and make sure that my hinges are also properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present and they are in good working condition. Right? My door opens and closes freely. I'm going to make sure that the weather seal is also properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It is not dry, rotted, or cracked in any way. It's not missing. It's in good working condition. It is there. From here, I'm going to go ahead and check my steps and my catwalk, making sure that they are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. There's no oil or grease or mud or dirt that's going to cause me to slip and fall. Everything's in good working condition. I'll move to my fuel tank, making sure it is properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It's not cracked or broken. Make sure you mention down here, it'd be nice if you point at the bottom to make sure it's not leaking under the fuel tank, right? There's no leaks. My fuel tank has to have a minimum of 2 metal straps with a rubber grommet or rubber seal behind it, making sure those are properly mounted secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. I'm going to check the fuel line on it, making sure that's also properly mounted secure. It's not broken, loose, or missing. It's not leaking any kind of fluid. It's not cracked or in any way. And the electrical connection on my fuel tank is also properly mounted and secure, and that those wires aren't cut, grounding, or exposed, or any excess electrical tape on them. Everything's in good working condition. I'll move back here and check my battery box. So I got my batteries in here. I'm going to make sure that my batteries are properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken. They're not leaking any kind of fluid. The cable connections are also properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present on those. And those wires are not grounding or cut or exposed, so there's no excess electrical tape. From here, we're going to check the frame, making sure that it is properly mounted secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It's not cracked or broken or bent or damaged in any way. There's no illegal holes or illegal welds on the frame. Everything's in good working condition. It is 2 pieces that run the length of the vehicle on both sides, and they're in good working condition. Now we're going to move to the middle and check the drive shaft. The drive shaft does have 2 universal joints, one in here and one under there, making sure they are properly mounted secure. They're not broken, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. The universal joints are properly greased. They're not worn out, and there's nothing wrapped around the drive shaft that's going to cause any issues later on. Now I'm going to move to the rear brake system, starting with the brake hoses. There is 2 hoses back here. I'm going to make sure those are properly mounted secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cut or damaged or dry rotted. There's no leaks coming out of them. They're in good working condition. Now I do have a dual brake chamber back here. In the front it was a single, so back here it's a dual brake chamber. I'm going to make sure that the dual brake chamber with C-clamps, plural, right, because there's 2 of them, are properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. I also have, although you can't see them, but I also have a push rod and slack adjuster back here along with my braking system. So the push rod and slack adjuster, I'm going to make sure they're properly mounted secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cracked or bent or broken or damaged in any way. And I should have no more than 2 inches of play. The way I would check my brakes back here is the same way as in the front. I'm going to go ahead and explain to him that I will chock my wheels, place the vehicle in low gear, and release the parking brake. So I'll push the brake valve in. Then I'll go ahead and pull on each slack adjuster once I've marked it back here, making sure that I have no more than 2 inches of play. Next, I'm going to move to my control arm mount, which is this one. Then my control arm for my suspension back here. And it is tough to see, but I have two U-bolts back here. My U-bolts, I have a shock absorber, and I have an airbag with the upper and lower plate. Then I'll go ahead and step back and explain to them that I'll check to make sure that they are all properly mounted secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. I'm also going to make sure that that shock absorber is not cracked, broken, or leaking any kind of fluid. And then I'm going to move to the airbag, making sure that the airbag has no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. It's not cracked or broken or dry rotted. It's not leaking any air. The upper and lower plate are also in good working condition. They're properly mounted, secure, not cracked or broken. Next, I'm going to make sure that the brake lining and the brake drum are also properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. The brake lining is not worn out dangerously thin, no less than 1/4 inch on my brake pads or brake shoes or brake lining. I'm going to make sure that the drum is not broken in any way. There's no signs of bluing indicating it overheated. Now I do have dual tires, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to my dual tires. And I'm going to check the inner and outer wall of every tire all the way back here, making sure that they're true and round. There's no excess hammering. They're properly mounted, secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. There's no illegal holds or illegal welds on any of these rims. They're in good working condition. I'm going to go ahead and check my tires and making sure that my tires are all beaded to the rim nicely. Right. Making sure that all my tires, the inner and outer walls of all the tires, have no abrasions, bubbles, or cuts. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. There's no signs of air leaks. I can't hear any kind of air leaks. Right. I'm going to make sure that they're worn evenly back here. No less than 2 30-seconds tread on the tires in the back. Now on the front tires, I had to make sure that they're brand new Virgin radio mobiles. It's a matching set, matching everything about those tires. Back here, they can be used tires. They could be recapped, retreaded, regrooved back here, and then in the front they can't. But back here they can be, as long as they're all the same size tire. They should be 90 to 110 psi air pressure, or whatever states on the sidewall of the tire. So I'm going to move on to my lug nuts here, making sure they're properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. They are not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. I'm going to check my axle seal, making sure my axle seal is properly mounted, secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. There are no signs of leaking from the axle seal. It does have liquid inside. It is in good working condition. I'm going to check the valve stem on these, making sure that the valve stem is also properly mounted, secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It's not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. It's not rubbing against the rim. It is in good working condition. Now I'm going to move in here, and under the fifth wheel there is a torque bar. I'm going to make sure that that torque bar is properly mounted, secure. It's not broke, loose, or missing. All the hardware is present. It's not cracked, broken, or damaged in any way. Now I'd also like to add that you don't really have to get under here under the vehicle like this. You can point out, as long as you're pointing to and explain to him from outside the vehicle. The DAVs might be a little bit loud, so you might want to be next to them, or talk a little bit over yourself, talk a little bit loud, so that way they can understand what you're saying. But I'm going to point out everything from down here. I'm going to move on to my mud flap next, making sure that my mud flap is as wide as my dual tires. I do have more than 2 inches of clearance on the floor. It is properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. I do have some DOT tape also on my mud flaps, which are properly mounted, secure. They're not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It's not ripped or torn in any way. It is in good working condition. I'm going to move to the rear lights, and I have 2 bigger red lights back here. Those are properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. Those serve as my left and right turn signals or indicators. They also serve as my emergencies or four-way flashers. They also serve as my running lights and my brake lights. I do also have a clear light back here, which is also properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. This light back here serves as my reverse light. I also have 2 little round DOT reflectors. They're red in color. They're properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. Now I'm going to move on to my coupling system. I'm going to start with the fifth wheel. I'm going to make sure it's properly mounted, secure, not broke, loose, or missing. All hardware is present. It is properly greased. There is no gap between the fifth wheel and the trailer itself or the apron. With that, I'll go ahead and move to the apron. which is the trailer, where the trailer sits onto the fifth wheel, making sure that is properly mounted, secure, not broke loose, missing. All hardware is present. As I mentioned, it is greased and there's no gap between the fifth wheel and the apron. I'm going to move on to my mounting bolts on my fifth wheel, making sure that those are all properly mounted, secure. They're not broke loose, missing. All hardware is present. They're not cracked or broken or damaged in any way. They're in good working condition. I'm going to check the kingpin to make sure that the kingpin is properly mounted, secure. It's not broke loose and missing. All hardware is present. I'm going to move to the locking jaws to make sure that the locking jaws are also properly mounted, secure. They're not broke loose and missing. All hardware is present. And they are properly wrapped around and in the lock position around the shank of the kingpin. Next, I'll move to my release lever for the fifth wheel, making sure it is properly mounted, secure. It's not broke loose and missing. All hardware is present, and it is in the lock position. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Leave them in the comments. So we are CDL Basic Training, SoCalCDLSchool.com, and this is our channel, CDL Basics, teaching you the basics of CDL driving. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up if you liked the video. Thanks for watching.